The first thing people notice about a king is his crown. The second thing they notice is whether he deserves it. I learned that lesson the hard way. A year ago, I was simply Prince Jaden, the second son, the spare heir, the prince who was never expected to rule. My brother Lucian had been the future. Everyone knew it. He was everything a king should be. Strong, charismatic, brilliant on the battlefield. The people adored him. The nobles respected him. The soldiers would have followed him into hell itself. And my father? King Aldrich was a legend. His victories were taught in military academies. His speeches inspired loyalty. His presence alone could silence an entire room. When people looked at him, they saw certainty. When people looked at me, they saw a boy that hadn't changed even after I inherited the throne. The kingdom was awake beneath my window. From the highest tower of the palace, I could see nearly everything. The marketplace, the harbor, the great cathedral, the river cutting through the city like a silver ribbon. My kingdom, my responsibility. Some mornings I still found it difficult to believe. The crown resting on my head felt too heavy, not physically, emotionally, as though it carried the weight of every expectation my father and brother had left behind. A knock interrupted my thoughts. Your Majesty? A servant stepped into the room. The council is assembled. Of course they were. The council always seemed assembled. Waiting, watching, judging. I straightened my coat and forced a smile. Thank you. The servant bowed and left. I stared at my reflection before following. 20 years old. Dark hair. Tired eyes. A face that looked older than it should. Sometimes I wondered when I had stopped looking like a prince and started looking like a king. Perhaps it happened during the funerals. Perhaps grief had aged me overnight. Whatever the reason, the boy I used to be was gone. The council chamber occupied the western wing of the palace. Massive stained glass windows filled the room with colored light. The long oak table stretched almost the entire length of the chamber. 30 counselors sat waiting. 30 powerful people, most twice my age, some 3 times. All of them stood when I entered. Not because they respected me, because protocol demanded it. Your Majesty. The greeting echoed through the room. I sat at the head of the table. Please. Everyone resumed their seats. Immediately Lord Oral leaned forward. He never wasted time. My king, there is an urgent matter that requires your attention. I almost laughed. Everything was urgent. Every disagreement. Every trade dispute. Every noble complaint. Every minor inconvenience somehow became a kingdom-threatening crisis. What is it this time? The old lord exchanged glances with several council members. Then he sighed dramatically. I already knew where this was heading. Princess Kiara. Again. My king, we have received another message from Nephite. There it was. I resisted the urge to rub my temples. Instead, I remained silent. Unfortunately, silence only encouraged them. The princess is expected to arrive within the month. Another council member nodded eagerly. The alliance would strengthen both kingdoms. The trade benefits alone would be remarkable, not to mention military cooperation. The people would support the marriage. One after another they continued, as though rehearsing lines from a script, as though I hadn't heard these exact arguments dozens of times already. Finally, I raised a hand. The room fell silent. Tell me something. No one spoke. Have any of you asked whether I want to marry Princess Kiara? Several counselors shifted uncomfortably. Lord Oral finally answered. With respect, Your Majesty, personal preference cannot always guide royal decisions. I smiled. A dangerous smile. The kind my brother used to wear before an argument. So that's a no. Nobody answered. Interesting. Very interesting. I stood and walked toward the nearest window. The city stretched before me. Busy. Alive. Everything I had worked so hard to protect. I have spent the last year rebuilding this kingdom. My voice remained calm. Controlled. I stabilized the treasury. I negotiated new trade agreements. I expanded our defenses. I turned to face them. And yet none of that seems to matter. My king. No. I cut Lord Oral off. For once I wanted them to listen. Actually listen. You speak as though the kingdom is fragile. I gestured toward the city. It isn't. You speak as though I am incapable. Several counselors lowered their eyes. That told me everything. Because the truth was simple. They doubted me. They always had. The war had stolen their certainty. My father's death had stolen their confidence. And my age made me an easy target. I was young. Just 23. Therefore I must be weak. That was their logic. Flawed. Insulting. Persistent. Finally, Lord Oral stood. Your Majesty, nobody questions your accomplishments. The lie was almost impressive. Almost. But perception matters. There it was. The real issue. Not ability. Perception. People believed a married king looked stronger than an unmarried one. People believed alliances created stability. People believed appearances were reality. I hated how often they were right. After a long moment I sighed. Arranged the meeting. The room visibly relaxed. Several counselors smiled. One even looked relieved enough to cry. God's help me. I will meet Princess Kiara. Cheers nearly erupted. Nearly. The council remembered where they were just in time. My king has made a wise decision. I ignored the comment. Because if I acknowledged it, I might say something regrettable. The meeting dragged on for another hour. Trade reports. Border updates. Tax reforms. Everything blurred together. By the time I escaped, my head was pounding. The palace corridors felt unusually quiet. I welcomed the silence. No politics. No marriage discussions. No expectations. Just peace. Unfortunately, peace never lasted long. Jaden. I smiled despite myself. Only one person in the entire kingdom still used my name without titles. Roland. The chief of staff stood waiting near my chambers. Gray-haired. Sharp-eyed. Perpetually amused. He had served my father for nearly 30 years. At this point, he felt more like family than an advisor. You look terrible. I groaned. Thank you. You're welcome. His grin widened. Council meeting? When isn't it? Roland laughed. Unlike most people in the palace, his laughter sounded genuine. Unrestrained. Human. Sometimes I envied that. Well, he said, perhaps I can improve your mood. Doubtful. I've found your new personal guard. That caught my attention. The previous captain had retired several weeks earlier. Finding a replacement had proven difficult. The position demanded absolute trust. One mistake could mean a dead king. And Roland folded his arms. His name is Kelo. The name meant nothing to me. He served on the northern border. Good. 7 years. Better. Multiple commendations. I nodded. Excellent. Roland's grin became suspiciously wider. I narrowed my eyes. What? Nothing. Roland. Nothing at all. That answer worried me. A lot. Because Roland only smiled like that when he knew something I didn't. And that usually meant trouble. He's waiting outside. My stomach tightened unexpectedly. Odd. I wasn't nervous. At least I didn't think I was. Still, something felt different. Perhaps instinct. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps boredom. Whatever the reason, I found myself suddenly interested in meeting this mysterious knight. Send him in. Roland stepped aside. The doors opened. And for a brief moment I forgot every thought in my head. The man entering the room was taller than most soldiers. Broad shoulders. Dark hair tied neatly behind his head. A scar near one temple. His armor gleamed beneath the afternoon sunlight. He moved with quiet confidence. Not arrogance. Not pride. Confidence. The kind earned through experience. For reasons I couldn't explain, my heartbeat stumbled. Gods. That was unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Because he was handsome. Dangerously handsome. The sort of handsome that made poets write terrible love songs. The sort of handsome that should probably require government regulation. Just wonderful. The knight dropped to one knee. Your Majesty. His voice was calm. Deep. Steady. Everything about him seemed steady. Meanwhile, my thoughts had become complete chaos. Rise. He obeyed. Unfortunately, standing made him even more impressive. I hated that. I truly did. My name is Sir Kelo Ardan. His gaze met mine. Professional. Respectful. Completely unaffected. Unlike me. It is an honor to serve. I cleared my throat. Professional. I needed to be professional. You served on the northern border? Yes, Your Majesty. For 7 years? Almost 8. That's a long time. It is. Short answers. Efficient. Disciplined. Exactly what one would expect from a career soldier. And somehow that only made him more attractive. This was becoming a problem. A very serious problem. One that had existed for approximately 30 seconds. Roland was absolutely going to notice. I could already tell. The old man noticed everything. Kelo continued. I understand the responsibilities of this position. I will protect you with my life, if necessary. The words should have sounded formal. Routine. Instead, they settled strangely inside my chest. Nobody had spoken to me like that in a long time. Not with certainty. Not with unwavering conviction. For the first time in months, I felt something unexpected. Safe. The realization startled me. Perhaps because I had forgotten what safety felt like. Kings were surrounded by people, yet rarely protected from loneliness. Kelo knew nothing about that. Nothing about me. Yet somehow his presence made the room feel less empty. And that terrified me more than any enemy ever could. Because dangerous feelings often began with simple moments. Simple conversations. Simple glances. And something told me this would not be the last time I found myself thinking about Sir Kelo Ardan. Not by a long shot. After Kelo left my chambers, I stared at the closed door for several seconds longer than was appropriate. Or sane. Or dignified. A king should not be standing in the middle of his office thinking about the jawline of a knight he had just met. Yet there I was, doing exactly that. He's handsome. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Roland was still standing there, watching me, with entirely too much amusement. I narrowed my eyes. Leave. His grin widened. I didn't say anything. You didn't need to. The old man laughed. Like actually laughed. The traitor. Then he finally took pity on me and walked toward the door. Just before leaving, he paused. For what it's worth, I think you'll like him. The door closed behind him, and I immediately regretted asking, because now the thought lingered in my head. Like him. I didn't need to like him. I needed him to keep me alive. That was his job. Nothing more. Nothing less. Unfortunately, my mind seemed determined to ignore logic. The rest of the afternoon passed slowly. Documents covered my desk. Trade agreements. Military reports. Petitions from nobles. Requests for funding. Normally, I could work through them without issue. Today, however, my concentration was terrible. Every few minutes my thoughts drifted. Back to dark hair. Back to calm eyes. Back to a voice that seemed permanently composed. It was ridiculous. I barely knew the man. By the time evening arrived, I had completed less work than usual and was irritated with myself. I pushed away from the desk and stood. Perhaps a walk would help. The palace grounds were quiet at sunset. Golden lights spilled across the stone pathways. Servants hurried between buildings. Guards changed shifts. The familiar routines of palace life continued around me. For a few precious moments, I almost forgot my responsibilities. Then I heard steel striking steel. The training yard. Curiosity pulled me toward the sound. Or perhaps it wasn't curiosity. Perhaps I already knew exactly who I hoped to find there. The realization was embarrassing. I ignored it. When I reached the training grounds, several knights were sparring. Wooden practice, swords clashed. Instructions echoed across the yard. And there he was. Kelo. I recognized him instantly. Not because of his armor. Not because of his height. Simply because my eyes found him before anyone else. An unfortunate development. He was training against another knight. The man attacking him looked experienced. Strong. Fast. It didn't matter. Kelo moved like water. Effortless. Controlled. Every strike was deflected. Every attack anticipated. Within moments, he disarmed his opponent. The practice sword flew across the yard. Several nearby soldiers applauded. Kelo merely offered his opponent a hand. No boasting. No arrogance. No celebration. Interesting. Very interesting. Most talented fighters enjoyed showing off. Kelo seemed completely uninterested in proving himself. I watched longer than I intended. Long enough for one of the palace guards to notice me. Immediately, everyone stopped. Wonderful. Now I looked like a king spying on his own soldiers. Exactly the image I wanted. The knights bowed, including Kelo. I stepped into the yard. At ease. Everyone relaxed. Somewhat. I looked toward the knight Kelo had defeated. You fight well. The man brightened. Thank you, Your Majesty. Then I turned to Kelo. A mistake. A terrible mistake. Because suddenly I remembered how unfairly attractive he was. I see Roland wasn't exaggerating your abilities. For the first time, I saw a faint smile. Small. Brief. Enough to completely ruin my concentration. He often exaggerates, Kelo said. I laughed before I could stop myself. The sound surprised both of us. I hadn't laughed much lately. Not genuinely. Not since before the war. Something softened in Kelo's expression. Only for a second. Then it disappeared. Interesting. Very interesting. Before I could think too much about it, another knight approached. Your Majesty, is it true Princess Kiara is coming? The question hit like a bucket of cold water. The yard became quiet. Everyone was listening. Of course they were. Rumors spread through palaces faster than disease. I sighed. Yes. Several soldiers exchanged excited glances. Wonderful. Even the guards were invested in my future marriage. I am meeting her. The clarification did little to reduce their enthusiasm. One soldier smiled. They say she's the most beautiful princess in the continent. I forced a smile. I'm sure they do. The conversation ended shortly afterward. But as I left the training yard, I couldn't help noticing something. Kelo had remained silent. No curiosity, no excitement, no questions, nothing. For some reason, that pleased me. It shouldn't have, yet it did. The following morning began before sunrise. A king's schedule rarely cared about comfort. By the time breakfast arrived, I had already met with military advisors, reviewed border reports, and approved 3 trade agreements. Exhausting, necessary, endless. Kelo accompanied me throughout the morning. Always nearby, always alert, yet somehow never intrusive. He seemed to understand exactly how much space to give me. An unusual skill. Most guards either hovered too closely or disappeared entirely. Kelo did neither. By midday, we were walking through one of the palace corridors. For the first time since his appointment, we were alone. Or as alone as a king could ever be. The silence stretched comfortably between us. Eventually, curiosity won. Where are you from? Kelo glanced at me. A village in the north. Do you visit often? No. The answer sounded final. Interesting. I waited. After a moment, he continued. My parents died when I was young. The words caught me off guard. I'm sorry. He shrugged. It was a long time ago. Still, I understood that kind of loss. Perhaps better than most. For a brief moment, neither of us spoke. Then I surprised myself. I lost my family recently. His gaze softened slightly. The king and crown prince. I nodded. Everyone knew the story. The entire kingdom knew. Yet hearing it aloud still hurt. Some wounds never truly healed. My brother was supposed to inherit the throne. The confession escaped before I could stop it. Kelo remained silent. Listening. Not interrupting. Not offering empty reassurances. Just listening. Oddly enough, that helped. Sometimes I think everyone would have preferred it. The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them. A king should not admit such things. Not even to a guard. Especially not to a guard. Yet Kelo surprised me. They would have preferred certainty. I frowned. What? People fear change. His voice remained calm. They trusted your father. They trusted your brother. He met my gaze. Trust takes time. The words were simple. Nothing extraordinary. Yet they struck deeper than I expected. Because they were true. For the first time in a long while, someone had spoken honestly. Without politics. Without manipulation. Without pretending. I found myself smiling. A genuine smile. You are unusually wise for a soldier. One corner of his mouth twitched. You are unusually informal for a king. I laughed. Actually laughed. Again. Gods. This man was dangerous. Not because he carried a sword. Because he made me forget my loneliness. And that was far more frightening. Later that evening, a messenger arrived from the eastern border. The palace immediately descended into chaos. Servants ran through hallways. Advisors gathered. Council members demanded meetings. By the time I reached the throne room, everyone was already waiting. Lord Oral stepped forward. The delegation from Nephite has crossed our borders. A collective murmur swept through the room. My stomach sank. So it was happening. Princess Kiara was coming. The future alliance. The future marriage. The future everyone wanted except me. When will they arrive? I asked. 5 days. 5 days. That was all. 5 days until my future changed. 5 days until I met the woman I was expected to marry. 5 days until the pressure from the council became impossible to avoid. The room erupted into discussion. Preparations. Security. Ceremonies. Formal receptions. I listened. Participated. Agreed when necessary. But my attention kept drifting. Toward the far side of the room. Toward the knight standing quietly beside the doors. Toward Kelo. He looked exactly the same as always. Calm. Steady. Unshaken. Completely unaware that my eyes kept finding him. Eventually, the meeting ended. Night settled over the palace. The corridors grew quiet. Moonlight spilled across marble floors. I stood alone on my balcony, overlooking the sleeping city. 5 days. Only 5 days. I should have been thinking about Princess Kiara. About diplomacy. About alliances. About the future of the kingdom. Instead, my thoughts drifted somewhere else entirely. Toward a night from the north. Toward quiet conversations. Toward unexpected laughter. toward a feeling I had no business entertaining. A cold wind swept across the balcony. Somewhere in the darkness below, a shadow moved. Too quickly, too deliberately. My instincts immediately sharpened. Someone was there, watching. The figure disappeared before I could call for the guards. Gone, as though it had never existed. A chill ran down my spine. Perhaps it was nothing. Perhaps it was only my imagination. Yet deep inside, a warning stirred. Something was coming. I didn't know what. I didn't know who. But for the first time in months, I felt it clearly. Danger. And as I turned away from the balcony, one thought entered my mind with startling certainty. Thank the gods I had hired Kelo.